Alright folks, welcome to Stu's Garage. We got Darshan in the house today, and he's back with the M8. And it's got a nice matte blue wrap on it now from, what's the wrap company?
KPMF.
KPMF. They did an amazing job on this car. It's got custom design on the top. We'll show you that detail a little bit later on. And we've got a set of custom downpipes that we're going to be putting on the car today. So we're going to go ahead and hop right into that install. So the first thing we're going to be doing, this car's a little bit different from the M6. If you guys happen to see that downpipe video, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to move these two reservoirs out the way. They're both in there using these Torx bit screws. So we're going to go ahead and pop those off and push those out the way, and then we're going to continue digging to see what else needs to come out of there. Alright, so once we pull the screws out of here, these things actually just lift up. They just pop into some rubber grommets down here. We've got these side covers, and these will lift off as well. And you're going to have to pop the hoses out of their slots over here in order to get yourself some space to loosen everything up, so you can push these reservoirs off to the side and access the screws to this heat shield. Alright, next thing we're going to do is we're going to pop these cables loose. These are for your O2 sensors, and I'm not going to point out every cable that might be attached to a guide or anything, but just want to point these last ones out. Your O2 sensors connect here, so we're going to go ahead and unplug those and let those hang. Also, with these reservoirs pushed out of the way, I have just enough space to get to the screws down here. I can see 3 screws, 1, 2, and 3, and there's probably, I don't know, it looks like 4 on this side. We'll see what happens when we get to it, and then the heat shield should come right out. Alright, so we got all the bolts out. So I was a little bit mistaken on how this thing is held in. Basically, you've got 2 bolts that hold this wire loom in. You take the wire loom off, and then you take the other 2 bolts out that hold the heat shield down. So we've actually got the heat shield loose. You just want to make sure that you pull all the wires out of these clips that go all the way around. I've got 2 more wires to pull loose, and the heat shield will be ready to come out. This thing's hot. Alright, there goes the heat shield. Okay, so there's a second heat shield down here, and this is the one that actually covers your turbos and your downpipes. There's 4 screws holding that in. There's one here, same thing on the other side. You just can't see it that well. Just have to push that reservoir up out the way. Alright, so we've got the heat shield loose. That's still being held on by the O2 sensors, so we have to get those off next. For that, you're going to need to get yourself a nice O2 sensor wrench tool. I got this where all the good tools come from, Amazon.com, and basically what you do, it's got a slide in there so you can slide it over top of the wire. Make sure that it's locked in. I'll actually tap this into place with like a hammer or something just to make sure that it's on there so that you don't damage anything, because if it's not fully on there, you're gonna have issues. So get the wrench on here, and we're gonna go ahead and pull the O2 sensors out. Alright, so you want to be very careful with your O2 sensors. Don't touch this with your hand. Be careful not to get any kind of grease or goop on it. Set this off in a nice safe area. Alright, now the heat shield is ready to come out. Got that nice and loose. There are 2 more O2 sensors down there, but we can pull those once we have the heat shield out of the way. There it goes. So now we can see turbos and your catalytic converters and the back side of the downpipes. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and use the reverse Torx bit. If you're working on a modern BMW, you got to have the reverse Torx bit screws or bit set, and we're going to pull these V-bands loose. We're going to remove the post-cat O2 sensors, and then we're going to go underneath the car. Alright, up to this point we've been using this T30 Torx bit for everything. All these screws here are all T30 screws. Alright, for the post cat we're going to use this E12 reverse Torx bit. That's what that looks like. Make sure you catch that washer when you pull that out so you don't lose that in the engine. And one thing I forgot is you've got some Allen keys right here for a bracket that basically mounts the downpipes to the engine block. So go ahead and pull those out as well. Alright, so for the V-bands, sometimes they might be a little bit stuck on there, and you can just kind of take a screwdriver. Don't go crazy with it, but you can try to pry that loose. There it goes. And just push the V-band back towards the turbo to get that out of the way. And now the top of your downpipes are completely loose. Alright, one more thing we need to disconnect from the top is the lower V-band clamp, and you'll see it better when you're working on your car. The bottom of this catalytic converter has a V-band clamp because it's in two pieces, and we're going to pull that one off. That's another reverse Torx bit tool. It looks like there's a lot of space, but it's actually pretty tight to try and get a ratchet down there, but we have to do it, so we're going to do it. Alright, one more thing before this catalytic converter comes out. Even though you have to disconnect the bracket up here, you also need to unbolt that from down there because it's blocking everything from coming out. We got the lower V-band loose, and then we're gonna get ready to pull this thing out. Alright, these top downpipes are gonna one more thing me to death, but basically you can see it right here. There's another bracket that's holding this catalytic converter in, and it's got two Allen key screws in it. Once we pull those out, then maybe we'll get this thing out of here. Alright folks, so I found a little trick to get these lower V-bands off, because the V-band points straight at the firewall. It's almost impossible to get this whole socket back here with your reverse Torx bit on there. I think the way that ends up happening is because all of this stuff is assembled outside of the car, and they just slide the whole engine, exhaust, transmission, all of that into the car, and you know, as it goes down the assembly line. As a result, you end up with very tight space between bolts like that, and there's absolutely no way to get any kind of a tool on there, especially the tool that you need. But what I found out is that for these reverse Torx, and I wouldn't advise doing this regularly, but for this reverse Torx, I'm actually able to get a 10mm wrench on there and get a few turns out of that. So that's what I'm going to have to do on the other side, because there's no way to fit that tool. And then the solution to that in the future is, once you go to put these V-bands back, you just make sure that you rotate them up towards you a little bit versus pointing them straight at the firewall. Alright, so from underneath the car now, we've got a million of these 10mm bolts. We got to take off this whole aluminum belly pan. There's also a bunch of 8mm black bolts here. All of this stuff that you see has to come down because there are two screws attached to the front of the downpipe. The second half of the downpipe is basically holding that downpipe on, and there's absolutely no way to reach them otherwise. So we're going to go ahead and pull this down and see how close we get. Alright, so we've got this enormous belly pan out of the car. This thing is like half the length of the car. It's real fun getting that out. The next thing we're going to do is pull out two 15mm bolts. You don't actually have to take them all the way out. The exhaust clamps, these are slip-on style exhaust, so just go ahead and loosen those up. You don't have to make them all the way loose. And then the next thing that we're going to do, now that we have this exposed, is we're going to unbolt these pipes, which still going to have a really hard time getting to that because the bolts go that way instead of that way. Alright folks, we got all the downpipes out. Getting ready to put the new ones back in. It was tons of fun getting these guys out. Basically had to just hit it a lot of times with the hammer in order to get those loose from the slip-ons. And then also to get these brackets that we just talked about, I had to connect a lot of extensions together with wobbles. So at this point I haven't actually taken the exhaust down from the car. I don't think that I'm actually going to need to. It is hanging, but I just haven't removed the whole thing. So we're going to try and get everything back in, Basically just working backwards from the point we are now and try to slide everything back together. And just real quick, we're going to take a close-up look at the new downpipes from SRM Motorsports. These are really well made. They've got the heat shield integrated into them, just like the OEM ones do, except the whole thing is heat shielded. It's got a nice flex section there to take the stress off of your V-bands. Also, I have to mention, make sure you save your V-bands, all of your V-bands, off of the stock exhaust, because we will be putting them back on to the aftermarket one. Alright folks, so it's been a little while for me, so I'm not 100% sure where I left off, but we've got the bottom all buttoned up, we've got the new downpipe sitting in place, we've got the rear O2 sensors in. So pretty much from this point, you're just going to want to remember to reinstall in the reverse order that you de-installed everything in. Make sure that you have all your cords running in the right place. Make sure that there's nothing that's going to be touching the headers. There's no tricks to anything. Unfortunately, this was just very difficult to piece everything back together, just because it's a very long reach from anywhere on the car. I had to be bent all the way over because it's just really far to reach all the way to the middle every time. The last little tidbit of information I'm going to give you guys is on your heat shield here, you're going to want to get rid of these little cups here, because just the way that the new downpipes are designed, the O2 sensor is not going to reach all the way up to the top of these things. So go ahead and pop these guys out and continue to install everything in the reverse order. Alright folks, there you have it. There's the downpipe install on the F93 brand new 2020 M8 competition, and it's pretty much going to be the same process for an F90 M5, the all-wheel drive M cars. And we're going to go ahead and crank this thing up and see what the cold start sounds like. And just a reminder, you're going to have to get this thing tuned in order to get the check engine light to go away. So let's go ahead and hear what this thing sounds like. Sounds super aggressive. Alright folks, final thoughts on the M8 downpipes install. It was a fairly straightforward install. There's no major tricks. I've shared with you the only tricks that there are to doing this install, which would be to use that 10mm wrench on those reverse Torx bits in the back of the engine. Besides that, this install did take a little bit of muscle. It took a good bit of persuasion, especially when it came to removing those lower downpipes from the slip-ons. I didn't show you exactly what I had to do, but basically I just had to keep hitting that post cat with the hammer a bunch of times, and yeah, it wasn't fun. But besides that, up top, getting everything lined up, there's no way that those downpipes would have lined up without the flex joints. So advice going forward, there's going to be a lot of downpipes on the market eventually for this. I would definitely suggest, if you're buying downpipes for the M8 or the M5, look for ones that have those flex joints in it, because if they don't and you're having fitment issues, it's just going to be a nightmare. There's no way you're going to get those things to line up. So look for those flex joints. Besides that, I went ahead and showed you guys a sound clip of it. This camera that I'm using Doesn't pick up the greatest sound in the world, especially when it comes to these cars. That's why I haven't done a sound clip of this car yet. I've shot it a few times and it just doesn't sound right to me. Sounds way better in person, but I just went ahead and did it for this car just because I don't have access to the M8 on a regular basis. So hopefully in the future when I have some better sound equipment, I'll be able to reshoot that for you guys. But final notes, if you're doing this install 10 years from now when all those bolts are nice and set into place, it's going to be twice as hard for you. So have fun with that, good luck, and don't forget, you can do this stuff. If you like this video and think it helped you out, please go ahead and hit the like button, not necessarily for my benefit, but it will help people in the future to be able to find this video a little bit more easier. So besides that, thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time.